Hello, everyone, and welcome back. Thank you so much for being here today. On today's episode, I'm much more than excited to share or film this video. And that's because I have personally experienced it, and I know a lot of people who have experienced it. If you saw from the title of the video, I'm talking about sexual harassment, particularly in the workplace. All right. I have worked in various capacities since I started, my life as an adult in my 20s, right? And I've experienced sexual harassment in many ways. It's a common thing, especially here in Africa. And, in our society right now, there's this understanding that we've all come to have that as long as you don't succumb to these things, as long as you don't accept it as part of our system, there's no way you can grow. And to a large extent, and in some ways, they are right in a way, but I also believe that there are ways that you can also handle these things in order that it doesn't escalate. Because the truth of the matter is that people are losing out on certain opportunities that could take them farther in life. People are losing out on certain opportunities that would help them climb the ladder, right? Case in point, this morning I got on a phone call with a friend. It was just a casual phone call, and I had brought up the fact that there was an opportunity that had come with one production house. And if you know me, I have actually done quite a number of commercials and a whole bunch of things, over the years. And I have a bit of a portfolio basically that, showcases some of the works that I have done. So and this person that I spoke with, this friend that I spoke with, um, happens to be a production manager as well, and he had mentioned that the production house that I wanted the opportunity with, um, uh, the owner of the production house is his friend, so he could connect me to have a conversation with the person so that I could, maybe not that I may not have to do auditioning or I may not have to audition for the role, but it would make it easier because he's a production manager as well, right? And I mean, after he said everything that he said, to cut the story short, he ended up saying that, but he's promiscuous. The person who owns the production house that is looking for people is also promiscuous. And he may disturb me with wanting to have something to do with me and all, right? So there's an understanding, even amongst these people, that in order for you to excel, in order for you to be able to do certain things or whatever, you have to give something, right? But I am of the opinion, I've even had women tell me that, right? But I'm of the opinion that no, you don't have to do that. Has it affected me in my life? Absolutely. It has taken away so many opportunities. However, I do believe that there's always a way out. All right. And so on today's episode, that's what we're going to talk about. I hope that you like, you share, you subscribe, and you comment, and let me know what you think at the end of the video. All right. And so without further ado, let's jump right into the video. This was 2021 when I had just gotten a new job. Obviously, I was invited for an interview. I went for the interview, and the very first day that I walked in, there was this guy who was walking around who says that, he was a manager or whatever he was at the time. This guy boldly came forward, just like I would do, to be very honest, just like I would do. The guy just walked up to me, introduced himself. And I remember that day I was with a friend, right? I was with a friend, and the person, even after we left, had mentioned that that guy likes you and you have to be very careful, right? And I didn't think too much of it. So a few weeks later, I got the job and I had to, start work. I started work, and the very first week, I didn't have a busy week, which is quite normal, right? And at the time, to my MD, who was a female, still remains my best boss ever, right? Shocking, right? She fired me, but she still is my best boss till today. And this woman, right after my interview, she had traveled, she left the country. And after she left, that first week, I was settling in. It was not busy. I was barely doing anything that week. So every day this guy would come to work, he would invite me to his office. In my mind, I knew that he was my boss. Now in hindsight, I realized that he had no business even being in my life in any way, in the sense of we didn't even have to kind of work or cross paths in the workplace. You understand? Because I was supposed to be assisting my MD at the time from my interview, as I knew, right? Fast forward, this gentleman would invite me to his office daily at random times for no bloody reason, right? Just to have conversations with me and ask me about my life. Again, being a smart girl, I knew where this was headed. This guy was persistent, he would call me at odd hours when I was at home. I was seeing someone at the time, and this person had advised me to make sure that I keep records of everything, because that person I was seeing as well was also the MD of his company wherever he worked, right? And so he would always tell me that keep records of things, make sure that you don't give him the space or make him comfortable around you and whatnot. This guy would tell me that he won't let me out of an office if I don't give him a peck or I don't give him a kiss and this and that. It was messy. Some days he would ask me that, oh, I need to go run some errands, right? And he would just bring his car key, put it on my desk and be like, you are driving, let's go. And then I have to drive him to wherever he's going to and whatnot. And all these things were happening within working hours. Eventually I got frustrated because at some point I remember that even I used to share some of the screenshots of his conversations to me with my spiritual father, right? And I remember that my father would even get frustrated, be upset that, but this is so inappropriate, right? You can't be working with somebody and then, mind you, knowing fully well that this person is your subordinate. The person who had actually connected me to the job, I had reported the issue to him. I had told him everything. At some point, people even thought that I had something to do with him. People didn't know that I was actually trying to act from a place of wisdom, because they didn't understand why I would say that he was doing all sorts of things, but then I would, respect him and whatnot. Now, fast forward, to cut this long story short, I had to report the issue because it was becoming a bit too much for me to handle. I had to report the issue to my MD, who was a female. Initially, she was very receptive. She understood. She felt like, bruh, this is absolute nonsense. I'm going to deal with it, da 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 da, and all. I remember that when I was going to report the issue to my boss, I had spoken to the person that I was in a relationship with at the time, and the person had mentioned that because he is also in corporate and also has a managerial position, he told me that I should not report the issue to my boss. But at the time, I felt like I was in the situation and I knew what I was dealing with, and so if anything, you let me tell her. Even if she's not happy about it, at least she would understand. I went on, I reported the issue, and later, I think that the woman had threatened the gentleman, made him know that if he keeps on doing those things, she's going to have to fire him and whatnot. Shortly after that incident, he started drawing closer. He was already close to the MD already, but he drew much more closer to this person, right? And I know that the person who had connected me to the job was a different person, knew some personal information about me. And that's why I'll stop here and say that when you're living this life, be sure or try, because we all make mistakes, try as much as possible to live life well, minimize the mistakes, right? Minimize don't intentionally put yourself in positions where you can't erase, right? This man knew certain vulnerable things about me and shared that with this guy who was already pursuing me. And I do think that it was because of that information that he even started pursuing me in the first place, right? Or maybe that, or maybe not, I don't know. And eventually, what happened was that this guy had shared all that information that he knew with my boss. So obviously, it became a thing of, I even lacked integrity. So if I say that somebody has done something like that to me, or I don't have a point, because I don't even have a good character anyway, right? And that is not an excuse for anybody to say that they're not going to defend you, because trust me, even prostitutes get molested, and it does not make it right just because that is their profession. You know what I mean? And so, I mean, fast forward, Uh, this guy frustrated my life. Yo, it was ghetto. Like day in day out for the things that I have done, the things that I haven't done. If you ever watched any of my previous content before I deleted my channel, I had shared that um, when I'm emotionally disturbed, when I'm frustrated, my input at work is horrible. You know, my emotions get the best of me and I am ineffective during those periods, right? Or during those times. And this guy made my life a living hell. He started bad mouthing me to people, the other colleagues, the people that he had even spoken to me about, right, in private. He turned it and made it seem like I was the one who was actually saying things about them. Listen, it was ghetto. It was horrible. You know, I remember that he had put in the mind of his fiance at the time would come by the office. And I remember that there was a time where um we had a conversation with she was around when we had a conversation. And the guy kind of made one snide comment about me being let me just say that he was just trying to imply that I was promiscuous. Let me just add that. Let me just say that. So obviously, I remember that I had spoken to my then boyfriend about it when he had mentioned, because he's also a man. He told me that I shouldn't worry, and that these are some of the the strategies that they use, so that if anything should happen, he would kind of assure his girlfriend or his fiance that I was the one who probably came onto him or something of that sort. And so these are things that people do, and I shouldn't let it gag me, right? And so I didn't take it personally. Eventually, there were a series of meetings, series of problems. Like it became the talk of the office, right? And I was just an uncomfortable young girl who was just trying to make a living, right? But this guy made my life miserable. Let me just put it that way. Just because I refused him and I reported him for an inappropriate behavior in the workplace. Let me add that, because I would not just get up and report anybody just because it's fun for me, right? Eventually, it even turned out to be that my boss even said that maybe I'm dealing from some sort of traumatic experience, that maybe I was molested as a child. And that's the reason why I think that when a man is making advances at me, they are ending my life and da da da. Bruh, hey God, it was a lot. It was a lot. And eventually what happened was that, well, one time, because of my my challenges, I remember that I had left the office with permission. I had left the office, and it was grounds, like it was a messy, and they just terminated my contract. And from there, I have never gone back to the corporate work again. It was for some reason, the day I got the letter, I was I wasn't sad. But what actually did me, funnily enough, that day, I had to go for an event with one of my very good friends. So we had already scheduled that he was picking me up after work that day. So I remember that immediately I got the letter around 4 p.m. Let me just say, around 4 p.m. And I started packing my stuff, and my friend. So by 5 p.m., my friend was already at my door. I didn't even tell him that something like this had happened. I just got outside. I sit down and I tell him, I showed him, I even gave him the letter to read it. And his words were, you have no idea how God has saved you from this problem. And you should be happy and grateful. But I can assure you that this company won't last for more than 5 years, because at the time it was a startup, right? It was a startup. So eventually, what happened was that I went home. After the event that evening, I had so much fun at the event. I remember that even when I received the letter, because I said earlier that that was my best, that it's still, she remains my best boss, right? I went to her office to say thank you. And unfortunately, she wasn't there. But on my way, when I was going to the event with my friend, I saw her on the road. And to be very honest, I saw the distress on her face. That was my observation. I could be wrong. Maybe she was coming from something or whatnot, but I saw it. So eventually, after the event, I went home. I was living with my cousin at the time, and my male cousin, younger than I am, way younger than I am actually. And I shared with him that this is what has happened, and he was like, "Thank goodness." I was like, "Wait, what? Like, I just lost my job. What do you mean by thank goodness?" But at the end of the day, all he said was that, "And you were always miserable without work anyway. So we thank God that you've even lost that job. Rest and find a way to go back to the life that you want to get back to." Now, with that being said, after all these years, I've never gone back to corporate work. I've just done a few things, helped people, run a business. I still do run the business. That has been a great source of income for me. But and particularly, I've never really enjoyed the corporate life. I've never really done, like, enjoyed it. So I mean, it was not a loss for me like that, but I do know that there are certain people that, it's their dream, but because of these things and the fact that they want to do things right in their life, they don't want to succumb to these things. Now, the first thing I would say is that, to the men or to the people that oppress these people, because I call this oppression, right? Because people have to have a healthy working environment. That when you're a leader in a company, right, automatically you have an upper hand over your subordinates. Your reviews, your actions and inactions affect the subordinates, right? And this is just plain advice I'm giving, right? And so sometimes when people even give into your advances, it's not because that's what they want. There's this notion that they can't climb up the ladder if you are they're not giving into your advances. And so please bear in mind that, yes, you may be indisciplined, because that's what it is. Your morality might be a mess. Yeah, we get that. But at the end of the day, if you really want to see people do well, don't make people suffer for what they're already suffering for, because work in itself is not easy. You know what I mean? So that's the first thing that I would say, that automatically, as long as you're a leader, your actions and inactions affect your subordinates in some ways, and vice versa. And so, honestly, I think that if you're a man or you're a woman watching me and you are into those things, please reconsider. And truth be told, there are people who have found love, great relationships from the workplace. If there is no agreement or some sort of understanding between the two of you, there's no sense, really, in oppressing people. Like, it's not the best. So don't do that. All right. So that's one. Now, to the people who are, in my shoes, the first thing I would say is that make sure that there's somebody that you can confide in. Make sure that there's somebody that you can talk to. Make sure that there's somebody that you trust, that you can, give that information to, so that when things go south, there's always somebody that you can say that at least I reported this to this person, because there would always be at least one person that would, even if they don't do anything about it, they can vouch for you that this is what I know, this is what this person told me, right? And that's why I said a trusted person, right? A trusted person that can show up for you. That's one. Or even it could even be that, even if not in the workplace, your family member, or like I said, my spiritual father or something, right? That is also another thing. And the second thing I would say is that sexual harassment is not an appropriate thing. And nobody is above being accused of that crime if they have done it. Bear that in mind, whether they are the manager, the MD, whoever they might be. If they have done it, you have a reason to accuse those people, right? And so don't let anybody intimidate you with their position, wherever they are. Like, don't let anybody intimidate you with things like that, right? I remember that even when I was there, my boss, for the sake of peace to have reigned, he switched my supervisor to another gentleman. Now this guy connived with this same person who had become my supervisor and was fueling negative things into this guy's head. If I made a mistake or I did something, it will escalate right now, right? And he even went as far as going to tell that person who became my new supervisor that I said he was gay. Mm. That's to the point that he said, this guy confronted me, said that he was going to sue me for defamation of character. Bruh. God has helped us. Let me just add that. Nobody is above that. As long as they have acted out of character, right? My father and the Lord will tell you, Shinasum, literally translates to slap them. Because if you're trying to be a foolish person, and society is also rarely on the side of people who experience those things, when you slap the hell out of them, they will come back to their senses or their brains would reset, right? So, I mean, obviously, I'm not saying go and be violent, but make sure that as long as the person has done it, you have every right whatsoever to confront, report, or whatever it is. All right. Now, third thing is that I would say that never accept the fact that these things are normal. Being violated is not a comfortable thing, right? Being violated is not something that should be tolerated. Basically, you're a human being who has a dignity to protect. You have an integrity to protect, and if anyone is going to or put you in a position where you have to compromise on your morality, nah, it is not to be accepted. You know what I mean? It's not to be accepted, and you shouldn't tolerate those things. All right. Like, what you stand for is what you stand for. People can tell you whatever. People can tell you it's because of self esteem challenges. People can tell you that, you want to destroy their life. As long as you believe that it is destroying your life or causing, putting you in harm's way, please nip it in the bud. Okay. Nip it in the bud. And so on today's episode, the best I can say is that um you have every right to confront the things that bother you, and you may miss out on certain opportunities because of that, but as long as your morals are intact and the Lord lives, I believe that there is a place on this earth for everybody. Sometimes you losing that job because of you standing your ground to do the right thing may be the best opportunity for you. All right, and it may put you in a position where you can rediscover yourself and whatnot. However, if you still choose to stay, or if you still choose to fight the battle, which is not a bad thing to do, make sure that you put yourself in a position where when push comes to shove, like I said earlier, you have proof, you have the right channels, or you can manage it well, so much so that you don't have to bend your values just to stay in a job. Because trust me, nothing immoral that you do is worth ever, ever, ever worth it. It is never ever worth it if you have to, destroy yourself just to gain anything. Believe me when I say that. All right. And so on today's episode, I hope that you've learned something. I hope that, you'd rearrange your philosophies. Again, if it's something you can deal with, that one, I know day, right? I know day for that one. But if you're on my side or you kind of agree with what I'm saying, then you might as well do everything in your power to protect that little integrity of yours. All right. And so on today's episode, I hope that this video blessed you. I hope that you would you'd share, you would comment, truly tell me what you think about this video. You can even share your experiences down below. And yeah, I guess I have touched everything that I need to touch on. And so on today's episode, thank you so much for watching. And hopefully, I will see you in the next one. Stay blessed. Mwah. Bye, everyone.